The train rolled through the morning fog like something half asleep, its whistle echoing across fields that hadn't seen sunlight in days. Maria sat near the window, hands folded over the frayed strap of her handbag, eyes on the gray horizon. The seat beside her smelled faintly of old wool and cigarette smoke. She hardly noticed. She was rehearsing her smile. A mother's smile, kind, small, harmless. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who looked older than 52, hair tied back neatly, lines etched deep around her mouth. Her dress was clean but worn, the color of weak tea. She could have passed for any factory widow from the edge of town, which was precisely what she wanted. They must think her harmless. They must believe she was poor, simple, and grateful. Only then would they lower their guard. When the train stopped at Brookhaven Station, the world changed color. The town glittered. Clean streets, shining cars, people with somewhere to be. Maria clutched the small box of homemade pastries on her lap, the only gift she could think to bring, and walked toward the gate where her son had said he'd be waiting. "Mom," Thomas waved, tall and handsome in a suit that fit him too well. His smile, so genuine, undid her a little. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "Clara's going to love you." Maria smiled. "You always say that." "I mean it this time." He loaded her small bag into the car, Clara's car, a silver one that gleamed like it had never known dust. Maria traced the smooth handle before getting in. The seats smelled of new leather and perfume. "They're very kind people," Thomas said as they drove. "A little formal but kind. Dad Dalton's a big name in finance. You'll like him." "I'm sure I will," she said softly, looking out at the passing mansions. "And your fiancée? She treats you well?" He grinned. "She's perfect." Maria's lips curved, but her eyes didn't join the smile. "Perfect people make me nervous." Thomas laughed.
Mom, yes.
Thomas laughed. "Mom, just promise me you won't be shy tonight." She nodded, hiding the tremor in her hands. Shy? She could manage that. She had practiced for years. The Dalton estate rose from the hill like a secret that cost too much money to keep. A long gravel drive, roses in bloom even though the season was wrong, and a house with more windows than she could count. Clara met them at the door, young, radiant, with a kind of effortless beauty that made other women nervous. She hugged Thomas first, then turned to Maria. "You must be Mrs. Alvarez," she said with a smile too polite to be warm. "We've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope." Maria offered the pastry box. "I made these. A little sweet from home." Clara blinked at it, as though unsure what to do. "How thoughtful. I'll have the kitchen put them out later." The kitchen. Of course. A tall woman appeared behind Clara, perfume preceding her. Evelyn Dalton. Elegant, composed, diamonds at her ears catching the chandelier's light. Her husband followed, a man with silver hair, eyes like ice water, handshake firm enough to remind you who paid for dinner. "Mrs. Alvarez," Evelyn said. "So wonderful to finally meet you. Thomas speaks very fondly of his mother." Maria lowered her eyes. "Thank you, ma'am. He's a good boy." Evelyn's smile was thin. "Indeed he is." Dinner was already set when they entered the dining room. Crystal glasses, silver that reflected candlelight like small stars. Maria tried not to stare, but the shine of it made her feel like she was under a microscope. Conversations started light: business, travel, the upcoming wedding. Every now and then Evelyn or her husband would glance at Maria as if waiting for her to misunderstand. When she stayed quiet, they smiled at one another, pleased. "Tell me," Mr. Dalton said after the first course, "what do you do with yourself these days, Mrs. Alvarez?" "I clean at the school," she said simply. "Keeps me busy." Evelyn's eyebrows lifted. "How industrious." Maria smiled. "Work is work, ma'am. Some of us are lucky to have any." A small silence followed. Thomas cleared his throat. "Mom's the hardest working person I know." That's admirable, Evelyn said quickly, her tone that of someone complimenting a child's drawing. We value hard work. Maria thanked her softly, pretending not to notice Clara's uneasy glance. After dinner, they moved to the sitting room for coffee. The room smelled of old books and polish. On the mantel above the fireplace were photographs, vacations, charity galas, family portraits. One frame caught her eye. A group picture. Years younger, the Daltons standing beside another couple. Her husband's face half turned toward the camera, laughing at something out of frame. The air left her lungs. She moved closer, careful not to make a sound. The man beside her husband, Mr. Dalton. Younger, smiling, hand resting on her husband's shoulder as if they'd been friends. Lovely picture, isn't it? Evelyn said behind her. Maria turned, hiding the tremor in her fingers. Very. My husband's always been sentimental, Evelyn continued. That was taken right before an unfortunate business matter years ago. We lost touch with several acquaintances after that. Maria's voice barely carried. I imagine you did. Evelyn smiled, unaware, or pretending not to notice, the edge in the words. Well, times change. But tonight isn't about the past. It's about family. Maria nodded, forcing the foolish, grateful expression she'd worn since she arrived. But inside her chest, something old and bitter stirred awake. When Thomas drove her to the guest cottage behind the main house that night, he kissed her forehead. You did great, Mom. They already love you. I'm sure they do, she said. But when the door closed and the silence wrapped around her, she let the smile fall. Evelyn's eyebrows lifted. How industrious. Maria smiled. Work is work, ma'am. Some of us are lucky to have any. A small silence followed. Thomas cleared his throat. Mom's the hardest working person I know. That's admirable, Evelyn said quickly, her tone that of someone complimenting a child's drawing. We value hard work. Maria thanked her softly, pretending not to notice Clara's uneasy glance. After dinner, they moved to the sitting room for coffee. The room smelled of old books and polish. On the mantel above the fireplace were photographs, vacations, charity galas, family portraits. One frame caught her eye. A group picture. Years younger, the Daltons standing beside another couple. Her husband's face half turned toward the camera, laughing at something out of frame. The air left her lungs. She moved closer, careful not to make a sound. The man beside her husband, Mr. Dalton. Younger, smiling, hand resting on her husband's shoulder as if they'd been friends. Lovely picture, isn't it? Evelyn said behind her. Maria turned, hiding the tremor in her fingers. Very. My husband's always been sentimental, Evelyn continued. That was taken right before an unfortunate business matter years ago. We lost touch with several acquaintances after that. Maria's voice barely carried. I imagine you did. Evelyn smiled, unaware, or pretending not to notice, the edge in the words. Well, times change. But tonight isn't about the past. It's about family. Maria nodded, forcing the foolish, grateful expression she'd worn since she arrived. But inside her chest, something old and bitter stirred awake. When Thomas drove her to the guest cottage behind the main house that night, he kissed her forehead. You did great, Mom. They already love you. I'm sure they do, she said. But when the door closed and the silence wrapped around her, she let the smile fall. On the desk by the window, she placed the small photograph she always carried, her husband, Raphael, grinning in front of his garage, the day before he died. She looked from it to the window where the Dalton mansion glowed like a lighthouse. Her whisper was almost lost in the night. So this is where you ended up. She sat on the bed, hands folded in her lap, eyes sharp and alive. The fool's mask had served its purpose. Tomorrow, she would start remembering. Morning at the Dalton estate arrived with the scent of roses and something artificial, like a life too carefully perfumed. Maria woke early before anyone else and stood by the small window of the guest cottage. The main house was already alive with movement, gardeners, maids, and a man washing the cars until they reflected the sky. She made herself tea, using a small kettle someone had left for her, and sat at the edge of the bed. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from memory. The photograph on the desk watched her. Raphael smiling, grease on his shirt, alive. And beside that image, her mind replayed the other photo from last night, Raphael standing beside Arthur Dalton, both young, both smiling, both unaware of what was coming. Maria sipped her tea and whispered, "You told me once a lie can buy you time. I think I understand that now." At breakfast, the Daltons' perfection gleamed like polished glass. Evelyn wore pale silk that caught the light, her hair a careful sculpture of elegance. Arthur read the paper at the table, glasses low on his nose, a man for whom silence meant control. Clara and Thomas arrived late, laughing softly, their hands touching in a way that seemed to make Evelyn flinch, though she covered it with a sip of coffee. "Did you sleep well, Mrs. Alvarez?" Evelyn asked, voice sweet with false concern. "Very well, thank you." Maria smiled. "The cottage is more than I deserve." "Don't say that," Clara said quickly, guilt flickering in her eyes. "Your family now." Maria noticed it, the tiny pause before family, the hesitation of someone repeating what they were told to say. Evelyn poured more coffee then, as if casually. "Thomas mentioned your husband passed away some years ago?" "Yes," Maria said. "An accident at his garage. A fire." "Tragic," Arthur murmured, not looking up from the paper. "Such things happen to hardworking men. It's unfortunate." Maria's hand froze over her cup. Unfortunate. That word again. The same one the police had used. The same one in the report that had left everything unanswered. "Yes," she said softly. "Unfortunate." Clara glanced between them, uneasy. "We don't have to talk about that." "Oh, I don't mind," Maria said. Her tone was gentle, but her eyes, dark, patient, were watching Arthur Dalton like someone measuring a shadow. "I've learned not to ask too many questions. Some answers just don't come." Arthur folded his newspaper carefully, the movement precise, deliberate. "Well," he said, smiling thinly, "some questions aren't meant to be asked." Their eyes met for just a second too long. It was enough. Later that afternoon, while the men went out to the golf course, Evelyn invited Maria to help arrange flowers for the evening reception, a casual event, she said, for family and close friends. Maria followed her through the maze of hallways, past paintings worth more than everything she'd ever owned. Evelyn's heels clicked on the marble, the rhythm like a metronome. "You have a wonderful son," Evelyn said. "Thank you. You must be proud." "I am. You did well, considering your circumstances." Maria looked at her. "We all do what we must." Evelyn smiled, but her hands tightened on the vase she was holding. "I don't mean to sound unkind. It's just, well, Clara grew up in a different world. I only hope she and Thomas can adjust." "Love adjusts everything," Maria said quietly. Perhaps. They worked in silence for a moment. The air between them felt heavy with something unsaid. Then Evelyn spoke again, her tone casual. "Tell me, Mrs. Alvarez, what did your husband do before he passed?" "He ran a small auto garage. Nothing fancy." "Ah." Evelyn arranged a rose stem, not looking up. "I thought I recognized the name once. We had a mechanic, Alvarez, I believe, who used to do work for one of Arthur's companies. Years ago. But that ended badly." Maria's fingers froze on a pedal. "Badly?" "Oh, I'm sure it was nothing," Evelyn said quickly, with a dismissive laugh. "Just a misunderstanding. He accused Arthur's firm of some financial wrongdoing. Absurd, really. The poor man was troubled, I think. And then, the fire." Her voice drifted, pretending sorrow. but Maria heard what hid beneath it. You know. I know you know. Maria smiled politely, the way fools do. Yes. Tragic. Indeed. They returned to the flowers. The silence stretched thin, the kind that could break with a whisper. Evelyn finally excused herself to take a call, leaving Maria alone. Maria stood there, heart pounding, staring at the roses. Their thorns gleamed sharp in the light. One by one, she clipped them shorter until the stems bled sap onto her fingers. Then she whispered, "You should have left his name out of your mouth." That evening, as guests arrived for the reception, Maria stayed in the background, watching. She noticed everything. The way Arthur avoided her, the way Evelyn pretended to be gracious, the way Clara kept glancing at her as if afraid Maria might say something dangerous. Thomas was radiant, in love, oblivious. She couldn't tell him yet, not until she knew everything. A family friend approached her, smiling kindly. "You must be the groom's mother. Such a lovely boy. The Daltons are lucky." Maria tilted her head slightly. "Are they?" The woman blinked. "Pardon." They worked in silence for a moment. The air between them felt heavy with something unsaid. Then Evelyn spoke again, her tone casual. "Tell me, Mrs. Alvarez, what did your husband do before he passed?" "He ran a small auto garage. Nothing fancy." "Ah." Evelyn arranged a rose stem, not looking up. "I thought I recognized the name once. We had a mechanic, Alvarez, I believe, who used to do work for one of Arthur's companies. Years ago. But that ended badly." Maria's fingers froze on a petal. "Badly?" "Oh, I'm sure it was nothing," Evelyn said quickly, with a dismissive laugh. "Just a misunderstanding. He accused Arthur's firm of some financial wrongdoing. Absurd, really. The poor man was troubled, I think. And then, the fire." Her voice drifted, pretending sorrow, but Maria heard what hid beneath it. "You know. I know you know." Maria smiled politely, the way fools do. "Yes. Tragic. Indeed." They returned to the flowers. The silence stretched thin, the kind that could break with a whisper. Evelyn finally excused herself to take a call, leaving Maria alone. Maria stood there, heart pounding, staring at the roses. Their thorns gleamed sharp in the light. One by one, she clipped them shorter until the stems bled sap onto her fingers. Then she whispered, "You should have left his name out of your mouth." That evening, as guests arrived for the reception, Maria stayed in the background, watching. She noticed everything. The way Arthur avoided her, the way Evelyn pretended to be gracious, the way Clara kept glancing at her as if afraid Maria might say something dangerous. Thomas was radiant, in love, oblivious. She couldn't tell him yet, not until she knew everything. A family friend approached her, smiling kindly. "You must be the groom's mother. Such a lovely boy. The Daltons are lucky." Maria tilted her head slightly. "Are they?" The woman blinked. "Pardon." Maria smiled again, the same sweet, quiet smile that fooled everyone. "Nothing, dear. Just thinking aloud." Later, after the music softened and the guests began to leave, Clara found her on the veranda. "Mrs. Alvarez," she said quietly, "may I speak with you?" Maria turned. "Of course, darling." Clara's face was pale, her eyes rimmed red. "My mother can be difficult. Please don't take anything she says personally." "Oh, I don't." Clara hesitated. "It's just, she has this idea that, well, that your husband caused trouble for my father once." "I'm so sorry she brought it up." Maria's gaze lingered on her, unreadable. "And what do you believe?" Clara swallowed. "I don't know. I was a child then. But I remember there was a fire. My father came home that night smelling of smoke." Maria's breath caught. "What did you say?" Clara looked frightened by her own words. "Nothing. I shouldn't have. Please don't tell him I said that." Maria reached out, touched the girl's trembling hand. "Don't worry, my dear. I'm very good at keeping secrets. Clara nodded, relief flooding her face. She left quickly, her perfume trailing like something too sweet to be trusted. Maria stood there, staring at the garden lights shimmering across the lawn. Then she whispered, "So it was you, Arthur. You brought the fire home." She walked back to her cottage in silence, her steps measured, calm, deliberate. Inside, she opened her purse and removed a folded envelope. Old police notes, names, and the photo she'd taken from the mantel when no one was looking. She laid it all out on the table, the pieces of a puzzle that had waited 15 years to be solved. Her hand brushed the edge of the picture, tracing Arthur Dalton's smiling face beside her husband's. "Perfect family," she murmured. "Let's see how perfect you are when the truth knocks on your door." Genre: emotional thriller/family mystery. Tone: revelation, grief, quiet rage. The wind had changed overnight. It carried the smell of rain and something metallic, like the earth remembering old blood. Maria stood in the doorway of her cottage, a shawl around her shoulders, watching the horizon darken. The mansion's lights flickered through the trees, perfect, golden rectangles against a world turning gray. She hadn't slept. Clara's words kept echoing in her mind. "My father came home that night smelling of smoke." Smoke. The word wrapped around her like a shroud. That morning, Thomas drove to the city with Clara to finalize the wedding arrangements. Evelyn was busy with her guests. Arthur left early for business. For the first time since her arrival, Maria had the house to herself. She crossed the garden with the slow steps of a servant, her head bowed as if she didn't belong there, which made her invisible to those who did. A gardener nodded politely. She smiled back, small and harmless. Inside, the Dalton mansion smelled of polish and citrus. Every surface gleamed. Every corner whispered money hides everything. She made her way to the library, the room Arthur Dalton never let anyone touch. The door was locked, but the lock was old. A hairpin and patience were all she needed. The click of the latch was soft, almost kind. The library was a shrine to power. Leather chairs, shelves of books bound in gold, trophies, certificates framed in arrogance. But Maria's eyes weren't looking for beauty. She was searching for ghosts. At first, there was nothing unusual. Then, near the desk, she found a locked drawer. Inside, old ledgers, photographs, and one thin envelope sealed with wax. She sat at the desk, her pulse steady. The envelope bore a name: Rafael Alvarez. Her husband. The paper inside was creased and yellowing, a letter typed but unsigned. The words blurred as she read them, her throat tightening. "The mechanic, Alvarez, has discovered the falsified records. He's threatening exposure unless compensated. Terminate the contract immediately. Make it look legitimate. And for God's sake, contain the fire before it spreads." Maria's hands trembled. Contain the fire. They hadn't meant it as a metaphor. Her husband hadn't died in an accident. He had been silenced. A sound startled her. Footsteps in the hall. She quickly folded the paper back into the envelope, slipped it into her bag, and stepped away from the desk just as Evelyn's voice floated through the doorway. "Mrs. Alvarez? Are you in here?" Maria turned calmly, hands clasped in front of her. "Oh, I was looking for the washroom. This house is so big, I must have gotten lost." Evelyn's eyes flicked to the desk, then back to her. The faintest crack appeared in her perfect composure. "It's just down the hall," she said, voice cool. "The library's private." "Of course," Maria said sweetly. "I didn't touch a thing." She walked out, her footsteps light, the envelope heavy against her ribs. That evening, she sat alone in the cottage again, the rain finally breaking against the roof. Each drop seemed to say his name. She unfolded the letter, smoothing the paper gently, as if it were fragile skin. For 15 years, she had believed the lie. Now she understood why no one had wanted to investigate. Arthur Dalton hadn't just stolen her husband's livelihood. He had taken his life and buried it under donations and dinner parties. Maria's hands shook, but her eyes were dry. "You always said the truth burns, Raphael," she whispered. "Maybe it's time they learned how it feels." The next morning, she went into town. Brookhaven's small police station sat between a cafe and a pharmacy, its walls lined with dust and indifference. She asked for the old fire report, the one from 15 years ago. The officer on duty, a tired man with half his shirt untucked, sighed. "Ma'am, we don't usually." Maria slid $50 across the counter. "Please." Money spoke faster than truth. He disappeared into the back and returned with a thin, yellowed folder. She opened it right there, her breath shallow. "Fire report, case number 3147. Alvarez Auto Repair." The summary was short. Cause: electrical malfunction. 1 casualty. Case closed. But near the bottom, in faint handwriting, she saw a note. Witness: C. Dalton Minor. Statement withheld by guardian's request. C. Dalton.
Clara.
Maria's world tilted. Clara had been there.
She had seen something.
That night, Maria returned to the estate, her resolve solid as the rain-soaked earth. She found Clara in the music room, sitting at the piano, fingers resting on the keys but not playing. The melody hung silent in the air. "Beautiful room," Maria said softly. Clara looked up, startled. "Mrs. Alvarez, I didn't hear you."
"I'm sorry."
"I didn't mean to interrupt. You play wonderfully." "I wasn't playing." Maria walked closer. "Then maybe you were remembering." Clara's face went still. "What do you mean?" Maria sat beside her on the piano bench. "You were there, weren't you? The night of the fire." Clara's eyes filled instantly. I don't know what you're talking about." "Child," Maria whispered. "You do? It's been eating you alive." Clara's hands covered her face. "He told me never to speak of it, that it was an accident. But I remember the shouting, your husband yelling about the money, and then the smoke." Maria closed her eyes, the sound of her husband's voice filling the silence. Clara's words spilled out now, trembling. "My father drove away before the fire started. He said the man had gone crazy, but I saw he locked the garage door from the outside. He said he was protecting me." Maria's breath hitched. Protecting her. He had called it protection when he murdered a man. Clara sobbed.
"I'm sorry."
"I didn't know what it meant back then." Maria took her hand gently. "You were a child. The guilt isn't yours." Clara looked at her, tears streaking her cheeks. "What are you going to do?" Maria's answer was simple. End it. When she returned to her cottage, the night had gone utterly still. She laid the letter, the fire report, and Clara's statement on the table, 3 fragile pieces of truth. She looked at them for a long time before folding them carefully into a single envelope marked with one word: justice. Then she dialed a number she hadn't called in 15 years. A reporter, an old friend of Raphael's. Someone who had always suspected the fire wasn't an accident. When the line connected, Maria's voice was calm. "It's me, Maria Alvarez. I'm ready to talk." By the next morning, Maria Alvarez had returned to her role, the simple mother, polite, humble, and almost invisible. The fool in plain sight. She baked bread in the guest cottage, brought flowers to Evelyn, and complimented the dinnerware. The staff adore her. The Daltons tolerated her. No one noticed the glint in her eyes. Except Clara. Clara watched her with a quiet, almost frightened awareness, like a child who's seen lightning and knows thunder is coming. That evening, there was a family dinner. Evelyn insisted. "The engagement party is this weekend," she said briskly. "We must appear united.
No tensión, no surprises."
Her words were meant for Clara, but they struck Maria too. "Of course," Maria said softly. "Family should always be united." Arthur Dalton's gaze lingered on her a moment longer than politeness required. "You're very wise, Mrs. Alvarez." She smiled, all warmth and naivety. Oh, I'm not wise. Just observant. He chuckled. Observation is dangerous. It makes people think too much. Thinking's all I have, Mr. Dalton. He looked away first. When dessert came, Maria excused herself, claiming she needed to call her sister. Instead, she slipped into Arthur's office. The door was locked again. It took her less than a minute this time. Inside, she moved with purpose. She knew where the files were, but she was after something else now. On the desk sat a black phone.
Landline. Secure.
She dialed her friend's number, the reporter. "It's me," she whispered. "I've sent you everything. The letter, the report, Clara's statement. You'll have it by morning." Maria, the voice on the other end, was cautious. "Once this goes public, you'll be exposing one of the most powerful families in the state. You could get hurt." Maria smiled faintly. "I already have been." She hung up. When she turned around, Evelyn Dalton was standing in the doorway. The older woman's expression was unreadable. "I thought you might be here." Maria didn't flinch. "I was just looking for the powder room again. I keep getting lost." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "My husband keeps important documents here. It's not a place for guests." Maria met her gaze, calm as still water. "You're right.
I suppose I'm just curious."
There are so many stories in this house." Evelyn's voice softened, too soft. "Curiosity is dangerous, Mrs. Alvarez. Especially when it wanders into the past." Maria tilted her head.
"Ah.
"Then we share a danger, don't we?" A flicker of alarm passed across Evelyn's perfect face. Just for a second. Then she smiled again, brittle and beautiful. "You really are an interesting woman." Maria returned the smile. "I've been told I'm simple-minded." "You're not." "No," Maria agreed. "But I can pretend." Later that night, Clara came to the cottage in secret. Her eyes were red. "I can't sleep. I keep seeing his face. Your husband." "You've carried the truth for a long time. It's bound to haunt you." Clara hesitated. "If my father finds out what you did, sending those papers, he'll destroy you." Maria looked at her with quiet kindness. "Child, he already destroyed me 15 years ago. This is just the rebuild." Clara reached across the table, gripping her hand. "He's not going to let this happen quietly." Maria smiled. "Good. Then I'll know he's listening." The next morning, the storm broke. The newspaper headline was small, tucked in the lower corner of the front page, but powerful enough to send shockwaves through the Dalton estate. Local tycoon linked to death in arson cover-up. Arthur Dalton's name wasn't printed. Not yet, but the details were unmistakable. The falsified insurance claim, the mysterious fire, the mechanic who died, the witness statement suppressed by wealth and fear. By noon, the phones were ringing nonstop. By 1, lawyers were arriving. By 2, Arthur's fury was uncontainable. He stormed into the cottage without knocking. Maria was waiting for him, calm, hands folded over her teacup. "What did you do?" His voice shook with rage. "I told the truth," she said simply. "You ruined my family." She looked up at him. Not angry, not afraid. Just tired. "You ruined mine first." He slammed his fist against the wall, eyes burning. "You think anyone will believe you? You think they'll take the word of a cleaning woman over mine?" Maria stood slowly, her calmness unnerving him. "It's not my word anymore. It's the evidence. The witness. The letter. The fire report. You can't burn paper twice." He froze, chest heaving. "Clara," he hissed. "She told you." She remembered. Maria said softly. "That's all. The truth doesn't stay buried forever, Mr. Dalton. It always finds air." Arthur took a step closer, his breath sharp. "Do you want money? Is that it? I'll pay you to keep quiet." Maria shook her head. "You already paid me." With his life. For the first time, his mask cracked, not rage this time, but fear. She saw it, and something inside her softened. "You could have come to me," she said quietly. "You could have told me it was a mistake. But you didn't. You built your empire on ashes." He turned to leave. "You'll regret this." "I already did," she whispered. That night, the mansion was chaos. Reporters outside. Lawyers inside. Evelyn moved through the halls like a ghost, silent, composed, broken beneath the surface. Thomas and Clara argued in the drawing room. Clara's voice trembled. "You can't defend him, Tom. You saw the evidence." "He's my future father-in-law," Thomas shouted back. "And your father. What am I supposed to do?" Maria watched from the doorway. "You're supposed to choose the truth." They both turned, startled. Thomas looked betrayed. "Mom, what did you do?" "I told the world what your father-in-law did," she said gently. "The same man who killed your father." Thomas blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Maria stepped closer. "You were too young to remember, but Raphael didn't die by accident. He found out Arthur Dalton was laundering money through his business. When he threatened to report it, Arthur silenced him." Clara whispered, "She's telling the truth." Thomas looked between them, disbelief breaking into horror.
Jesus Christ.
"I'm sorry," Maria said softly. "I should have told you sooner, but I had to be sure." He turned away, hands trembling. You came here knowing all this?" "I came here to see if he'd changed. To see if my son was marrying into peace or poison." Clara broke into tears. Thomas caught her, both of them shaking. Maria looked at them. Two young souls caught in the wreckage of sins not their own. "I didn't want revenge," she said quietly. "I wanted freedom. For you both. For all of us." By morning, the police arrived at the estate with warrants. Arthur Dalton was taken away in a black car, his face pale and drawn. Evelyn didn't weep. She stood at the top of the stairs, head high, diamonds glinting like tears she refused to shed. As he was let out, Arthur looked back at Maria. By morning, the police arrived at the estate with warrants. Arthur Dalton was taken away in a black car, his face pale and drawn. Evelyn didn't weep. She stood at the top of the stairs, head high, diamonds glinting like tears she refused to shed. As he was let out, Arthur looked back at Maria. For a second, there was something almost human in his eyes. Regret, perhaps. Or relief that it was finally over. Maria gave him a single nod. Nothing more. That evening, when the estate finally fell quiet, Maria walked through the empty halls. The photographs on the mantel had been removed. Only dust outlines remained where perfection used to be. Clara found her in the library. "They're saying he might confess," she said softly. "He wants to make a deal." Maria nodded. "He should. The truth costs less when you pay for it yourself." Clara hesitated. "What will you do now?" Maria smiled faintly. "Go home. My real home. I think Raphael's waited long enough." Clara hugged her, the first real embrace between them. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," Maria whispered. "You helped set him free too." As she stepped outside, the air smelled of rain again.
Clean this time.
The sky, for the first time in years, felt open. She looked back once at the mansion, its lights dim, its walls no longer perfect, and whispered, "I played the fool long enough." Then she walked away. 3 weeks had passed since the arrest. The Dalton mansion stood quiet now, like a grand stage after the audience had gone home. The gates were locked, the windows dark. The estate that had once glittered with money and lies was now just another house full of ghosts. Maria watched it from the edge of the gravel road one last time. A wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint scent of ashes. She pulled her shawl tighter. There was no satisfaction in her heart. Only peace, fragile, trembling, real. Down in the town square, life went on. The bakery sold morning bread, children ran to school, cars honked at the lights. The world hadn't stopped for truth or tragedy. It rarely did. Maria found herself back at the old auto shop. What was left of it? The building was now a small community garage, rebuilt years ago on the same ground where the fire had taken her husband. The smell of oil and dust still clung to the walls. She knelt near the corner where the scorch marks had once been and set down a small bouquet of marigolds. "For you," she whispered. "It's done." A single tear fell, but she didn't wipe it away. She let it fall to the earth that had already taken so much from her. Later that afternoon, Thomas arrived. He looked older than she remembered, not in years, but in the way truth reshapes a man. His engagement to Clara had quietly ended. There had been no fight, just two people who needed to heal apart. He found his mother sitting outside the small cafe by the river, sipping coffee from a chipped cup. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Maria smiled. "You never have to ask." He sat, staring at the water. "They're saying Arthur Dalton's agreed to a plea deal. He'll serve time, but not much. Wealth buys mercy, I guess." Maria nodded slowly. Mercy isn't always freedom. Some prisons don't have walls. Thomas looked at her. "You planned everything, didn't you? Pretending to be simple. Harmless." She smiled faintly. It's easy to underestimate a woman who listens more than she speaks. "I don't know if I could have done it," he admitted. "To face them like that." "You could," she said. "You just haven't had to yet." He hesitated. "Clara told me something before she left. She said you forgave her father." Maria's gaze stayed on the river. "I didn't forgive him. I just stopped carrying him. That's different." They sat in silence for a while, the river murmuring its secrets. Then Thomas spoke again. "You know, when Dad died, I blamed you. For years, I thought you should have done more. Fought harder. I didn't understand." Maria's hands tightened around her cup, but her voice was gentle. "You were a child. You wanted someone to blame. I never held it against you. I'm sorry." "I know." He took her hand across the table. "So, what now? You'll stay in town?" She shook her head.
No.
"I think I'll go home, the old village. The house is falling apart, but the garden still grows. It'll be enough." Thomas smiled sadly. "You're finally free." Maria looked up at the clouds drifting above the hills. "Freedom's strange, isn't it? You wait for it your whole life, and when it comes, it feels like loss." That evening, she returned to the cottage to pack. Her things were few: a shawl, a handful of photographs, the letter that had started everything, and a small framed picture of Raphael. As she wrapped the photo, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Older, lined, but unbroken. For years, she had thought of herself as the fool. The quiet, poor woman who'd been too naive to see the truth. But now she understood. The fool had survived because she'd known when to act small and when to strike like fire. She whispered to her reflection, "You played the fool so they'd show you their masks." Then she smiled. And now, none of them can hide anymore. Before leaving Brookhaven for good, Maria stopped once more at the cemetery. The headstone was simple. Rafael Alvarez, 1967-2010. Beloved husband, father, and dreamer. She brushed the dust from his name and set a single marigold there. "I found them," she said softly. "I made them speak." The wind rose, moving through the tall grass, and for a moment she thought she heard his laugh, the same deep, warm sound she'd carried in her heart all these years. She closed her eyes, letting the sound fade into memory. "I'm going home now," she whispered. "You can rest." As she walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, lighting the sky in gold and smoke-colored orange, the color of endings and beginnings. And for the first time since the fire, Maria Alvarez didn't look back.
Epilogue.
6 months later, a small article appeared in the Brookhaven Gazette. Arthur Dalton, former CEO of Dalton Holdings, sentenced to 8 years for obstruction of justice and fraud. The case, reopened after new evidence surfaced, has led to state-level investigations into corporate cover-ups across multiple industries. Sources close to the family report that Dalton's wife and daughter have left the country. At the very bottom of the article, in fine print, the revelations came to light through evidence supplied by a local resident, Mrs. Maria Alvarez. She declined to comment. In a quiet village 3 hours away, Maria tended her garden under the afternoon sun. A radio played softly from the window, a folk song about home and loss. Her hands were dirty, her heart light. As she stood, wiping the sweat from her brow, she looked up at the horizon and whispered, "We're free, Raphael." The wind stirred the marigolds, and the woman who had once played the fool smiled, wise, strong, and finally at peace. Never mistake a mother's silence for weakness. A humble widow pretends to be naive when visiting her son's wealthy fiancé's family, only to uncover that the patriarch of the household was responsible for her husband's mysterious death, forcing her to confront the man who shattered her life.